part 263. It's line 22f1e1b Arsenic exposure type 2 diabetes Wow Seti. There's the alien radial signal there. And data quotes to read is Environ Health Perspect, 2006 May, and it was published online in 2005. Commentaries review Arsenic exposure in type 2 diabetes, a systematic review of the experimental and epidemiologic evidence. And there's all the authors for this, lots of them. And I'll just let you read that for a second. This article has been cited by other articles in PMC. Abstract. Chronic arsenic exposure has been suggested to contribute to diabetes development. We performed a systematic review of the experimental and epidemiologic evidence on the association of arsenic and type 2 diabetes. We identified 19 in vitro studies of arsenic and glucose metabolism. 5 studies reported that arsenic interfered with transcription factors involved in insulin-related gene expression. Upstream factor 1 in pancreatic B cells and perioxum proliferative activated receptor Y in preadipocytes. Other in vitro studies assessed the effect of arsenic on glucose uptake, typically using very high concentrations of arsenite or arsenate. These studies provide limited insight on potential mechanisms. We identified 10 in vivo studies in animals. These studies showed inconsistent effects of arsenic on glucose metabolism. Finally, we identified 19 epidemiologic studies, 6 in the high arsenic areas in Taiwan and Bangladesh, 9 in occupational populations, and 4 in other populations. In studies from Taiwan and Bangladesh, the pooled relative risk estimate for diabetes comparing extreme arsenic exposure categories was 2.52, 95% confidence interval 1.69 to 375. Although methodologic problems limit the interpretation of the association, the evidence from occupational studies and from general populations other than Taiwan or Bangladesh was inconsistent. In summary, the current available evidence is inadequate to establish a causal role of arsenic in diabetes. Because arsenic exposure is widespread and diabetes prevalence is reaching epidemic proportions, experimental studies using arsenic concentrations relevant to human exposure and prospective epidemiologic studies measuring arsenic biomarkers and appropriately assessing diabetes should be a research priority. Keywords are arsenic, diabetes, glucose metabolism, meta-analysis, systematic review. Type 2 diabetes mellitus is a metabolic disorder characterized by hyperglycemia, insulin resistance in peripheral tissues, and altered insulin secretory capacity of pancreatic B cells. Type 2 diabetes accounts for 90 to 95% of all cases of diabetes and is a major health problem worldwide as of 2004. Established risk factors of type 2 diabetes include older age, obesity, physical inactivity, family history, and genetic polymorphisms. In addition, environmental toxicants include arsenic have been suggested to play an etiologic role in diabetes development. Longnecker and Daniels, 2001. Arsenic is a recognized toxicant and carcinogen. Non-occupational exposure occurs mainly through drinking water, affecting millions of people worldwide. Exposure to levels of arsenic in drinking water well above 100 ppb has been associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes in the high arsenic areas of Taiwan and Bangladesh. Lay et al. 1994, Raman et al. 1998. The biological, just on a word of that, those ppbs are also in your drinking water that you buy the bottled water. You're at risk of developing diabetes just because you drink that water. The biological mechanisms for an association between chronic arsenic exposure and increased diabetes risk are not known. National Research Council, 1999, 2001, to Tseng, 2004. Previous reviews of the role of arsenic in diabetes have questioned the quality of the evidence but were supportive of the possibility of an association. Just don't feel like reading all those. I'm going to drink a water while you guys read it. There you go. Okay. These reviews, however, did not use systematic review criteria and may be subject to biased selection of the evidence. Our objective was to perform a systematic review of the experimental and epidemiologic evidence on arsenic and type 2 diabetes. We examined experimental studies in vitro or in vivo to synthesize available information on plausible mechanisms for the effect of arsenic on glucose metabolism, as well as epidemiologic studies to synthesize the association of arsenic exposure with diabetes risk in humans. And that's at www.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. Next came up a different diabetes. Arsenic plus high-fat diet yields an unusual diabetes phenotype in mice. From Julia Barrett, and she's a science writer, editor for EHP since 1996. She's a member of the National Association of Science Writers and the Board of Editors in the Life Sciences. The citation is Barrett, Jr. 2011, A Different Diabetes. Arsenic plus high-fat diet yields an unusual diabetes phenotype in mice, Environment Health Perspect, August 2011. And the website's ehp03.niehs.nih.gov. There's the rest of it there. And there's the other document. I guess that's where the PDF is. The results suggest inorganic arsenic reduces diet-induced obesity in mice, but acts synergistically with a high-fat diet to produce glucose intolerance, a symptom typically associated with prediabetes. The combination of glucose intolerance and elevated blood glucose levels with near normal plasma insulin levels differs from the typical phenotype for type 2 diabetes. The author points out that the measures indicating near normal insulin sensitivity when paired with glucose intolerance can reflect impaired insulin production by pancreatic cells, a characteristic of advanced diabetes. However, the study did not measure cell function and signals that regulate it, and thus cannot offer insight on this possibility. More comprehensive investigation is needed to determine how inorganic arsenic exposure alone and with a high-fat diet might induce type 2 diabetes. And again, that's the same article, ehph03.nih.gov. Okay? That's the end of that video, and I'm getting near the end of my battery power here too, so I've still got another one to go.